Yep, all of the above. And what's in front of you guys? Pedigree. Awesome. This week, we're going to try to make sense out of the Skittles that are in your pedigree. Learn a little more about genealogy. So, last week we had a couple definitions, pedigree, ancestry, and genealogy. Genealogists. This week, we're going to talk about vital records. Anybody know what vital records are? Yes?
Records of life.
Records of life. Yes. Vital records. Any more? Anybody else have another definition?
Records are of life of the government.
Yep. Records that are actually held by the government. This is usually your birth certificate, your death certificate, your marriage record. Not records you necessarily keep, like some families have a family Bible, and so those records are kept in the family Bible. But those are not a vital record because it's not kept by the government. And then census. Anybody know what a census is?
It's an official count or survey of a population taken by the government.
Very good.
I totally didn't.
You totally didn't read that.
How did you know that?
But what does that mean? When was the last time you were recorded on a census? Right now? Why? Why 2 years ago?
Because it's every certain amount of years.
It's every 10 years and it's on the 0 year. So in 2020, you were recorded on the census.
Tripp Sanders, how did you know that?
I just knew that it was like, I figured that it'd be like the same year as like an election and it like lined up with the 0. It made sense.
Okay. I just had to know, like, why we would have
Yeah,
that make
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, the censuses are recorded 1900, 1910, 1920, 1930, and so on and so forth. So every 10 years we get a glimpse of where you are, where you live, who you're living with. So who, in 2020, think about where you were living. Does anybody know for certain in 2010, how old would you have been? 2, 3, 0, 1, or 0. Who was living in a completely different house than you were living in 2020? Okay. So you moved. In those 10 years, sometime in those 10 years you moved. And so the census is a record of where people are. The government also uses it for various information. They note your job. In years past, they've noted your income. In newer censuses, they just give you a range of income. But on some censuses, I have seen that for a year, people make $600. How could you live off of $600? Today you can't, but way back when things are a penny and a nickel a piece, you know, you could live off of it. They might farm, and when they farm their crop, they would sell their crop and probably make about $600. The government uses it to put funds in various places. In, what's that called? Forestries, in homeless populations, different cities, different governments. Like Little Rock is more populated than Pocahontas. Yeah, I was like, give me a small town. Yeah, so funds would be differentiated by how many people lives there.
State tax money, like your state parks or
right.
Okay.
So, what information would your birth certificate have on it? So look.
The day you were born.
Your name. What'd you say back there?
The day you were born.
The day you were born, yes. What else? Yeah. Where you were born?
Your weight.
Your weight, yes, it does. It does. Your parents' name. I don't know if you guys can see. Can you guys see the name on this birth certificate?
I can't.
Okay. It's not mine. It's never good to show living people your birth certificate. This is my grandfather's birth certificate, and it says the name on it is Amos Gilbert Smith. When I knew my grandfather, his name was Gilbert A. Smith. But his birth certificate says his name was the other way around. It was Amos Gilbert. So at some point in time, he changed his name. He started going by Gilbert and using that as a first name. Has anybody flip-flopped their names yet? You flip-flopped your names?
Yes.
Very good, very good.
Well, I go by my second name.
You go by your second name. Well, it looks like that's probably what happened to him. He began going by Gilbert, and then he just adapted the name as Gilbert Amos rather than Amos Gilbert. Marriage record. This is not a vital record, but this is another instance of a record of a marriage. This is a newspaper article. This is my parents' newspaper article when they got married. So a marriage record's probably going to include the two people who got married, what day they married, their parents' name, and maybe what city and state they were married in. But if you find a record that's a newspaper article, it might give you more information. So this first arrow is my mother's sister's name. The second arrow at the top is my father's multiple brothers. He was one of 6 brothers. So it's got a bunch of the brothers' names. And you probably can't read it on the bottom. Let me read it over here. It says that my mother is a senior at Coloma High School and is employed at Dawn's Donuts. I know where she was working at 17, 18 years old. She was working at a donut shop. So it can give you some really personal information, which is sometimes a good clue. So a death certificate. I hit on this last week. What do you think I think is the most important element on a death certificate?
I guess the name.
The name Pierce. Can you tell me what I think the most important element on the death certificate is? There might be some red in there if you can see it. That's not coming through at all, is it? How someone died. Did they die in a car wreck? Were they shot? Did they have a heart attack? This is my grandmother's record, and she died of a pulmonary embolism. So that's a blood clot that goes straight to your brain and just basically kills you. She was 70 years old. So on a death certificate, you're going to find the name, a birth and death date. So that rounds out our life cycle. Where somebody was born, where somebody died, when, the parent's name, the location, and most importantly, how did that person die? Did they have cancer? Because it will also stay on there for a period of 3 years or a period of 1 month. It will include a duration of an illness. Okay, here is a census. So a census is a big long document, and there's multiple lines besides what I just showed you. So this one was taken in 1950. Census records are only released every 72 years. So in April, the 1950 census was released. In 10 years, the 1960 census. And for me, the important element of the 1950 census, my mother was born in 49. So it's the first chance I get to see her after she was born. So, you know, it tells me where she lives, who she's living with. So when the 1950 census came out, I wanted to see where my aunts and uncles, at that point in time, my mother and all her siblings were spread out all over the place. So I'm like, where is so-and-so living? Where is so-and-so living? And so in the 1950 census, I found that my aunts and uncles, Norman, Margaret, and Philip, are living with their father's mother, their grandmother, Augusta. It's going to tell you that Augusta is the head of the household. She's living there without a spouse. It also says she's widowed, so he has passed away. Then further down, my arrow has blocked it. It tells me that Augusta was born in Germany. So what does that make her? What?
An immigrant.
An immigrant. She is an immigrant. So she came over to the U.S. and had to apply for citizenship if she wanted to vote, if she wanted to get government funds and stuff like that. She's got to become an American citizen. Yes, sir. They figured that was the lifespan of a person to keep privacy intact. So, I mean, if someone dies at 50 or if they die at 90, we get to see a glimpse of them because, you know, their first census is released when they become 72. So, yeah, it's just kind of a privacy thing. So, what is this again? What's it called? Census. A census. Very, very important document. All right, who's related to anybody famous?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't checked before.
Who's your famous person? Johnny Cash. Who's your famous person?
One of the Kardashians.
For real?
What about Bill Clinton? Did you prove that false?
Oh, well, we don't share birthdays, but I couldn't figure out
How? Who are you related to?
Bessie Coleman.
Who?
Bessie Coleman.
Okay, very good. Well, now we need to start talking about your Skittles. So I'm gonna hand these out. These are little cups, Petri dishes. Are they all ready? So, if we have a famous person in our family tree, what do we need to do? We need to find out where they fall on your pedigree chart. Where's your pedigree chart? Right there. We want to know which of your 4 grandparents
Oh, I don't have mine.
is related to that person. Okay, is it your dad? Is it your mom?
my grandmother.
Your grandmother, please have mom or dad. Mom, your grandmother on mom's side, and then where? You don't know. Well, you gotta figure that out. Okay. So we're gonna meander through your family tree further than your grandmother, your 4 grandmothers and grandfathers, and we want to meander through and figure out where these famous people are. So where do they fall on the pedigree chart? All right. In our family, it's always been a lore that we're related to Albert Einstein.
Whoa.
Well, good news. It's not on my family tree. So that means it falls on, everybody know who Mr. Todd is?
Yes.
Oh, you go Haley.
Yes. It falls on his family tree. So, for a long time, Todd's brother, who's a physicist, doesn't want any of the children to say, we're related to Albert Einstein. There's no proof of it. So, his mother did DNA, and I sought out to find it. Where does Albert Einstein fall on our tree? So this is Mr. Todd's mom, Miss Betty, and we went hunting through her tree trying to figure out which Skittle we're gonna follow. Skittle. So it's not her mother, who's Betty, it's her father, who's Edwin. Then the story goes, Edwin's mother, Yetta, attended Albert's wedding, one of his 2 weddings. So that looked right. So we're looking at the grandparent who's Yeti. And so we look through her tree and we find that she's got a Retzinger line and a Hillbronner line. Well, we go through the Retzinger line and we can't find it. So eventually I figure out it's on the Hillbronner line. All German relations, they're all from Germany. And then I have to figure out, is it Hillbronner or is it Mandel? And I have no clue how these German names are pronounced. I'm just, maybe she's related to Howie Mandel too. I don't know. So we're going through the pedigree and we're not going to the mother's side, we're going to the father's side. And then we start going to the mother's side down and we're following the mother's line. So that is where we eventually find Mr. Albert Einstein, sixth cousin 3 times removed from Blake. So, this is Blake's chart. There's my side on the left and Mr. Todd's side. Which side we going to? Okay. His father's on the top, his mother's on the bottom. Which side we going? Father's on the top, mother's on the bottom.
Bottom.
Bottom. Yep, it's his mother's side. So where do we find Mr. Albert? In the blue Skittles. Who's got blue Skittles? Maybe Albert's in your tree too.
I got